Hello, welcome to Andy Tales. After watching the video, make sure there's no one else in the room. Don't forget to write your city and the time in the comments.
The door that never closed. I've always been a skeptic, the kind of person who dismisses ghost stories as fanciful tales, the product of overactive imaginations, or too much late-night television. Growing up in a bustling city, surrounded by the hum of traffic and the glow of neon signs, I never had much room for the supernatural, my childhood filled with practical concerns, helping my mother at her diner, studying for exams. Saving every penny for a future I hoped would be brighter than our cramped apartment. My father, a mechanic with a penchant for logic, instilled in me a belief in the tangible, the explainable, the things I could touch and fix with my hands. But as I grew older, I found myself drawn to history, to the stories of the past etched into the walls of old buildings, the kind of places that held secrets I couldn't quite dismiss. Now, in my early 50s, with a career as an archivist and a quiet life in a small town, I've learned that some things can't be explained, no matter how much you want to believe they can, and some doors, once opened, refuse to close. Last summer, I was hired to catalog the contents of an old estate on the edge of town, a sprawling mansion known as Harrow House, a name whispered by locals with a mix of reverence and fear, its history steeped in tragedy and mystery. The house had been abandoned since the 1940s after the Harrow family, textile magnates who'd built their fortune on the backs of mill workers, vanished overnight, leaving behind only rumors of madness, strange rituals, and a fire that gutted half the East Wing. The current owner, a distant relative who lived abroad, wanted the estate inventoried before selling it, and I jumped at the chance, eager to uncover the past, my notebooks and camera ready to document every detail. I arrived on a humid morning, the air thick with the scent of wildflowers and decay, the mansion looming against a sky heavy with the promise of rain, its stone walls blackened by soot, its windows boarded, the ivy climbing the turrets like skeletal fingers. The silence of the grounds broken only by the caw of a distant crow. Inside, the house was a labyrinth of dark hallways and creaking staircases, the air heavy with the smell of mildew, charred wood, and something sharper, like burnt hair, clinging to the back of my throat as I stepped over the threshold. My flashlight casting long shadows across the faded wallpaper, its floral patterns peeling like skin. The rooms were frozen in time, filled with relics of the Harrow family's wealth, gilded mirrors with cracked glass, a grand chandelier dangling precariously from the ceiling, its crystals dulled by dust, a dining table set for a meal that never happened. The silverware tarnished, the plates chipped, the air thick with the weight of absence. I started in the library, its shelves sagging under the weight of leather-bound books, their pages yellowed, the titles faded, the air heavy with the smell of decaying paper, the silence oppressive, broken only by the creak of the floorboards under my weight. Each step a reminder of the house's age, its history pressing against me like a living thing. I spent the first day cataloging books and furniture, my hands steady as I photographed each item, my notebook filling with descriptions, first editions of Dickens, a velvet chaise with claw marks on the armrests. A portrait of a stern-faced woman in a black dress, her eyes painted with an intensity that made my skin prickle. By late afternoon, I reached the second floor, where a narrow hallway led to a series of locked doors. There would warped, the brass knobs tarnished, the air colder here, the burnt hair smell stronger, mixed with something rancid, like rotting meat, making my stomach churn as I worked. I tried each door, the locks unyielding, until I reached the last one at the end of the hall, its knob loose, though it scratched with what looked like claw marks, deep and jagged, as if something had tried to escape or get in. I pushed it open, the hinges groaning, revealing a small room, its walls bare except for a single window, its glass smeared with grime, the floor covered in ash, the air thick with the smell of charred flesh. The silence broken by a faint whisper, close me, close me, close me, soft and guttural, coming from the door itself, the words slithering into my ears like a physical touch. I froze, my flashlight trembling in my hand, the beam catching the scratches on the door, the claw marks glowing faintly, a pale green light that pulsed like a heartbeat, the whisper growing louder, close me, and I felt a cold breath on my neck, sharp and icy. Despite the humid air, the sensation sinking into my bones. I slammed the door shut, my hands shaking, the whisper muffled but persistent, close me, seeping through the wood, through the walls, through the air itself, and I heard footsteps, slow and deliberate, pacing the hallway behind me, the floorboards creaking with each step. The air thick with the rancid smell, the temperature dropping until my breath fogged in the dim light. I turned, expecting to see someone, but the hallway was empty, the shadows pooling in the corners, their shapes tall and thin, their outlines blurred, their eyes glowing, white and unblinking, staring at me from the edges of my vision, the whisper turning into a chant. Close me, close me, close me, echoing through the house, a sound that clawed at my skull. I ran downstairs, my footsteps echoing on the staircase, the chant following, close me, as I fumbled with my bag, grabbing a hammer and nails, my hands trembling as I returned to the door, boarding it up. The nails driving into the frame with a sound that echoed in the stillness, the chant muffled but persistent, close me, as I worked, the air thick with the smell of charred flesh, the shadows moving closer, their glowing eyes peering from the hallway, watching me, unblinking. I finished, the boards secure, the door sealed, the chant fading, close me, as I backed away, the house silent save for the creak of the floorboards, the air heavy with the weight of what I'd done, the shadows retreating. Their glowing eyes lingering in the corners of my vision, a reminder of their presence. I left the mansion that night, the sky dark with storm clouds, the air heavy with the scent of rain as I drove home, my cottage a welcome sanctuary, the warmth of the fireplace a stark contrast to the cold of Harrow House, the smell of charred flesh clinging to my clothes. The whisper echoing in my ears, close me, even as I tried to sleep, the shadows of the trees outside my window twisting into tall, thin figures, their eyes glowing, watching me through the glass. The next morning, I returned to the mansion, determined to finish the job, my notebook and camera ready, the air colder now, the burnt hair smell stronger, the house feeling alive as I stepped inside, the floorboards groaning, the windows rattling. The whisper waiting, close me, faint but persistent, coming from the second floor, the hallway, the door I'd boarded shut. I reached the door, my heart pounding, the boards splintered, the nails scattered on the floor, the door ajar, the scratches deeper, the claw marks glowing brighter, the words "You're here" etched into the wood, the green light pulsing like a heartbeat, the chant louder, close me. And I heard the footsteps again, closer now, the shadows pooling in the room, their shapes tall and thin, their eyes glowing, watching me, unblinking. I pushed the door open, the hinges groaning, the room darker now, the windows glass cracked, the grime-forming faces, their hollow eyes glowing, their mouths opening, voids of jagged shapes dripping with a black ichor that seeped onto the floor, the chant echoing, close me. And I saw the figures in the reflection of the glass, their claw-like hands pressing against the pane, leaving smears that pulsed green, their mouths opening, the ichor dripping onto the ash, the footsteps circling the house, the air thick with the smell of charred flesh, the temperature dropping until my breath fogged in the dim light. I tried to close the door, my hands shaking, but it wouldn't budge, the hinges frozen, the chant louder, close me, and I felt the figures behind me, their cold breath on my neck, their glowing fingers brushing my shoulder, leaving a chill that burned, the ichor dripping onto my boots. The footsteps pacing faster, the shadows pooling in every corner, their glowing eyes watching me, unblinking. I ran, the door slamming shut behind me, the chant following, close me, as I stumbled down the stairs, the house shaking, the chandelier crashing to the floor, the crystals shattering, the sound swallowed by the silence that followed, the shadows chasing me. Their claw-like hands reaching out, leaving smears that pulsed green, their mouths opening, the ichor dripping onto the floorboards, the footsteps echoing through the house, a sound that clawed at my skull. I drove to the local library, desperate for answers, my hands trembling as I searched the archives, the air heavy with the smell of old paper, the silence broken only by the rustle of pages, the whisper lingering, close me, in my ears. I found a single record, a newspaper clipping from 1942, yellowed and brittle, detailing the Harrow family's disappearance, the fire that gutted the East Wing, the rumors of a door in the house that never closed, a portal to shadows. Trapping souls that whispered to those who opened it, their watchers, tall, thin shadows with glowing eyes, never leaving those who heard too much, their lives haunted by the door's chant. I spoke to a local historian, an old man with a face like crumpled paper, who nodded grimly, saying, "Harrow House has a door that never closes, not really." They say the family opened it, let something out, something that burned them alive. You sure you got the right house? I nodded, my throat tight, and walked away, the whisper waiting for me at home, its chant a constant drone, close me, in my ears. I moved out that month, renting a new place in the city, a sterile apartment with no history, but the whisper followed, close me, faint at first, coming from the doors of my new home, the scratches appearing, the faces watching, the green light pulsing like a heartbeat. I went back to Harrow House, desperate to end it, but the mansion was gone, replaced by an empty field, the ground uneven, littered with broken glass and weeds, the air heavy with the smell of decay. I asked a local, an old woman gathering firewood, if she knew about the house, but she shook her head, saying, "Ain't been nothing there since the fire in '42. They say the door never closed, not really, trapping shadows that whisper to those who listen. You sure you got the right place?" I nodded, my throat tight, and walked away, the whisper waiting for me at home, its chant a constant drone, close me, in my ears. I found a single thread online, buried in an obscure forum, about a door in Harrow House, its hinges alive, whispering to those who opened it, its watchers tall, thin shadows with glowing eyes, never leaving those who heard too much. Their lives haunted by the door's chant. I don't catalog old houses anymore, don't even touch doorknobs at night, too afraid of what I might hear behind them. I keep the door's brass knob locked in a safe, buried in a storage unit across town, but I hear the chant, close me, faint and distant on quiet nights when the air feels thick, and I see those glowing eyes in every shadow, every reflection, watching me. Their presence a weight I can't escape. I sleep with the lights on, the doors locked tight, every creak of the building sending my heart racing, and I never open strange doors anymore, terrified that one day the safe will open itself and the shadows will step out, their chant pulling me into the darkness. The letter that knew my name. I've always been a collector of stories, not the kind you find in books, but the ones whispered in the corners of dimly lit diners, shared over flickering campfires, or scrawled in the margins of old letters, their words heavy with the weight of lives long forgotten. It started when I was a child, growing up in a small, rain-soaked town on the edge of a dense forest, where the air always smelled of pine and damp earth, and the elders told tales of things that lingered in the shadows, watching from the trees. My grandmother, a seamstress with hands gnarled from years of stitching, would sit me on her lap by the hearth, her voice low as she recounted stories of lost travelers, haunted mills, and letters that arrived with no sender, their ink bleeding with secrets no one dared to speak. I'd listen, wide-eyed, my heart racing, my imagination painting pictures of the unseen, the unknown, the things that waited just beyond the fire's glow. Now, in my late 40s, with a quiet life as a postal worker in a rural village, I still seek out those stories, my attic filled with boxes of old correspondence I've collected over the years, love letters, wartime dispatches, cryptic notes with no return address, each one a fragment of someone's past, a whisper of the lives they left behind. Last autumn, I was sorting through a backlog at the post office, a crumbling brick building on the edge of town, its windows fogged with condensation, the air heavy with the scent of ink, paper, and the faint tang of mildew that clung to the walls. The village was small, its residents mostly farmers and retirees, their mail predictable. Bills, catalogs, the occasional postcard from a grandchild studying abroad. But that day, I found something unusual, a letter buried at the bottom of a sack, its envelope yellowed, the edges frayed, the paper brittle under my fingers, the address scrawled in a jagged script that sent a shiver down my spine. To Thomas Reed, 14, Maple Lane. That was my address, my name, but I hadn't lived there long, having moved into the old cottage just a month prior. Its previous owner, a recluse named Mr. Carver, having passed away under circumstances the locals only whispered about. Their voices hushed as they spoke of strange noises, flickering lights, and a figure seen in the windows long after his death. The letter had no return address, no postmark, the stamp faded, its design unfamiliar, a crest with a raven and a broken quill. The ink smudged as if it had been handled by wet hands. I turned it over, my fingers trembling, the paper heavier than it should have been. The mildew smell stronger now, mixed with something metallic, like blood or rust, clinging to the back of my throat as I slid it open with a letter opener, the blade catching on the brittle paper, the sound echoing in the silence of the empty post office, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, casting harsh shadows across the counter. Inside was a single sheet, its surface stained with what looked like watermarks, the ink a deep crimson, the words written in the same jagged script. "Thomas, I know you. I've always known you. You can't hide from me." The words were underlined, the ink bleeding into the paper, the metallic smell intensifying, the air growing colder, the temperature dropping until my breath fogged in the dim light, a whisper slithering into my ears. "I see you, I see you, I see you." Soft and guttural, coming from the letter itself, the words a physical touch, the paper trembling in my hands, the crimson ink glowing faintly, a pale green light that pulsed like a heartbeat. I dropped the letter, my heart pounding, the paper fluttering to the counter, the whisper growing louder. "I see you." And I felt a cold breath on my neck, sharp and icy, despite the closed door, the sensation sinking into my bones, the shadows in the corners of the room stretching, their shapes tall and thin, their outlines blurred, their eyes glowing, white and unblinking, staring at me from the edges of my vision. I grabbed the letter, shoving it into my bag, my hands trembling, the whisper following, "I see you." As I locked up the post office, the sky outside a heavy gray, the air thick with the scent of rain as I drove home, my cottage a small sanctuary at the end of a winding lane, the trees looming overhead, their branches twisting into skeletal fingers, the whisper lingering, "I see you." Even as I tried to calm myself, the shadows of the forest seeming to move, their glowing eyes peering from the darkness, watching me through the windshield. I arrived home, the cottage dark, the air heavy with the smell of damp wood, the letter burning a hole in my bag as I set it on the kitchen table, the crimson ink glowing brighter, the words, "You can't hide," pulsing like a heartbeat, the whisper echoing, "I see you," in my ears. I tried to ignore it, brewing a pot of tea, the steam rising in the dim light of a single bulb, the house quiet save for the patter of rain against the windows, the air thick with the metallic smell, now mixed with something rancid, like rotting flesh, making my stomach churn as I sat with my notebook, trying to document the letter, my pen scratching across the page, the words blurring as my hands shook, the whisper growing louder. "I see you." And I heard footsteps, slow and deliberate, pacing. Outside, the gravel crunching with each step, the air thick with the rancid smell, the temperature dropping until my breath fogged in the dim light. I stood, my tea spilling onto the floor, the cup shattering, the sound swallowed by the silence that followed, the whisper turning into a chant. "I see you, I see you, I see you." And I felt the figures behind me, their cold breath on my neck, their glowing fingers brushing my shoulder, leaving a chill that burned, the ichor dripping onto the floorboards, the footsteps circling the house, the windows rattling in their frames, the shadows pooling under the door, their glowing eyes peering through the gap, watching me unblinking. I grabbed the letter, my hands shaking, and threw it into the fireplace, the flames roaring as the paper curled, the crimson ink hissing as it dripped into the fire, the smoke thick and black, carrying the chant, "I see you." Into the air, the footsteps pacing faster, the shadows moving closer, their claw-like hands reaching out, leaving smears that pulsed green, their mouths opening, the ichor dripping onto the floor, the chant echoing through the house, a sound that clawed at my skull. The next morning, I woke to find the letter on my bedside table, the paper pristine, the crimson ink glowing brighter, the words "You can't hide" pulsing like a heartbeat, the chant louder, "I see you." And I heard the footsteps again, closer now, the shadows pooling in the corners of the room, their shapes tall and thin, their eyes glowing, watching me, unblinking. I drove to the local library, desperate for answers, the letter heavy in my bag, the air heavy with the smell of old paper, the silence broken only by the rustle of pages, the whisper lingering, "I see you," in my ears. I found a single record, a journal from the 1920s, its pages brittle, the ink faded, detailing the Carver family's history, their obsession with the occult, their experiments with letters that spoke, letters that knew names, trapping souls that whispered to those who opened them, their watchers, tall, thin shadows with glowing eyes, never leaving those who read too much, their lives haunted by the letter's chant. I spoke to a local historian, an old woman with a face like crumpled paper, who nodded grimly, saying, "The Carvers sent letters that knew names, letters that spoke, letters that trapped. They say Mr. Carver opened one, let something out, something that knew him. You sure you got the right letter?" I nodded, my throat tight, and walked away, the whisper waiting for me at home, its chant a constant drone, "I see you," in my ears. I moved out that month, renting a new place in the city, a sterile apartment with no history, but the letter followed, appearing on the counter, its chant louder, "I see you." And I saw the shadows in every reflection, the glass of the windows, the mirror in the bathroom, their glowing eyes peering from the edges, their presence a weight I can't escape. I keep the letter locked in a safe, buried in a storage unit across town. But I hear that chant, "I see you," faint and distant, on quiet nights when the air feels thick, and I see those glowing eyes in every shadow, every reflection, watching me, their presence a weight I can't escape. I sleep with the lights on, the windows covered, every creak of the building sending my heart racing, and I never open strange letters anymore, terrified that one day, the safe will open itself, and the shadows will step out, their chant pulling me into the darkness. The candle that burned without flame. I've always been captivated by the flicker of candlelight, a fascination that began in my early childhood, growing up in a remote village nestled between jagged cliffs and a restless sea where electricity was a luxury we couldn't afford. And the nights were long and dark, broken only by the soft glow of tallow candles my mother made from the fat of slaughtered livestock. I'd sit by the hearth, the air thick with the scent of wax, smoke, and the salty tang of the ocean, watching the flame dance, its shadows stretching across the stone walls, my young mind weaving stories of spirits and sailors lost to the waves, their voices carried on the wind. My father, a fisherman with hands roughened by nets and salt, told me tales of the old ways, of candles lit to guide the dead, their wicks burning with more than fire, their light a beacon for things that shouldn't return. As I grew older, I carried that fascination into adulthood, my modest home in a quiet hamlet filled with antique candlesticks, beeswax candles, and oil lamps, each one a relic of a time when light was a fragile defense against the dark. My evenings spent reading by their glow, the crackle of the wick a comforting rhythm against the silence. Last spring, I stumbled upon a new edition at a roadside antique fair, a sprawling event held in a muddy field on the outskirts of town, the air heavy with the smell of damp earth, wood smoke, and the faint sweetness of rotting fruit from overturned stalls. The fair was a chaos of voices, the clatter of coins, and the creak of wooden tables, its vendors hawking everything from chipped china to rusted tools, their faces weathered by years under the sun. I wandered through the crowd, my fingers trailing over the surfaces, the textures familiar yet unsettling, the fair's energy a stark contrast to the stillness of my home when I spotted an old woman at the edge of the field. Her stall a rickety table draped in black cloth, her face hidden beneath a hood, her hands gnarled like tree roots, the air around her colder, the smell of wax and decay stronger as I approached. On her table sat a single candle, its wax a deep black, its wick unlit, its surface etched with symbols I couldn't decipher, the carvings pulsing faintly, a pale green light that seemed to shift under my gaze, the air thick with the scent of burnt sugar. now mixed with something rancid like spoiled meat, making my stomach churn as I picked it up, the wax colder than the spring air, the weight heavier than it should have been, the woman's voice a rasp as she said, "It burns without flame. Take it, but beware what it calls." I handed over a crumpled $5 bill, the paper trembling in my hand, the candle burning a hole in my bag as I left, the fare fading behind me, the whisper of her words lingering, "Beware what it calls," in my ears. I brought the candle home that evening, the sky outside a heavy gray, the air thick with the scent of rain as I placed it on my mantle, the black wax reflecting the light of a single bulb overhead, the symbols glowing brighter, the green light pulsing like a heartbeat. The rancid smell intensifying, mixed with something metallic like blood or rust, clinging to the back of my throat as I examined it with a magnifying glass, the carvings more detailed than I'd realized, the symbols not just etched but alive with an energy I couldn't place, their shapes curling like tendrils, their hollow centers glowing, their mouths opening, voids of jagged shapes dripping with a black ichor that seeped onto the mantle, the whisper slithering into my ears, "See me, see me." See me soft and guttural, the words of physical touch, the air growing colder, the temperature dropping until my breath fogged in the dim light. I dropped the magnifying glass, my heart pounding, the glass shattering on the floor, the sound swallowed by the silence that followed, the whisper growing louder, "See me," and I felt a cold breath on my neck, sharp and icy despite the closed window. The sensation sinking into my bones, the shadows in the corners of the room stretching, their shapes tall and thin, their outlines blurred, their eyes glowing, white and unblinking, staring at me from the edges of my vision. I tried to ignore it, lighting a match to test the candle, the flame trembling as I brought it to the wick, but the wick remained cold, the black wax glowing brighter, the symbols pulsing, the whisper turning into a chant, "See me, see me, see me." And I heard footsteps, slow and deliberate, pacing outside, the gravel crunching with each step, the air thick with the rancid smell, the temperature dropping further, my breath fogging in the dim light. I blew out the match, my hands shaking, the chant persisting, "See me," seeping through the walls, through the air itself, and I saw the figures in the reflection of the window, their claw-like hands pressing against the glass, leaving smears that pulsed green, their mouths opening. The ichor dripping onto the sill, the footsteps circling the house, the windows rattling in their frames, the shadows pooling under the door, their glowing eyes peering through the gap, watching me unblinking. I grabbed the candle, my hands trembling, and threw it into a metal box, sealing it with a padlock, the chant muffled but persistent, "See me," as I buried the box in the garden, the earth cold and damp, the whisper fading, "See me." As I covered it with dirt, the forest silent save for the rustle of leaves, the air heavy with the smell of pine and decay. But the next morning, I woke to find the candle on my mantle, the box splintered, the padlock broken, the black wax pristine, the symbols glowing brighter, the words "You're mine" etched into the wax, the chant louder, "See me," and I heard the footsteps again. Closer now, the shadows pooling in the corners of the room, their shapes tall and thin, their eyes glowing, watching me unblinking. I drove to the antique fair, desperate for answers, the field empty now, the stalls gone, the air heavy with the smell of decay, the ground uneven, littered with broken glass and weeds, the woman's stall a faint imprint in the mud, the whisper lingering, "See me," in my ears. I asked a local farmer, an old man with a face like leather, if he knew about the fair, but he shook his head, saying, "Ain't been no fair here since the flood in '98. They say an old woman sold cursed things, candles that burned without flame, calling shadows to those who lit them. You sure you got the right place?" I nodded, my throat tight, and walked away, the candle waiting for me at home, its chant a constant drone, "See me," in my ears. I found a single thread online, buried in an obscure forum, about a candle that burned without flame, its wax alive, whispering to those who touched it, its watchers tall, thin shadows with glowing eyes, never leaving those who saw too much, their lives haunted by the candle's chant. I don't collect candles anymore, don't even light lamps at night, too afraid of what I might see in the glow. I keep the candle locked in a safe, buried in a storage unit across town, but I hear the chant, "See me," faint and distant on quiet nights when the air feels thick, and I see those glowing eyes in every shadow, every reflection, watching me. Their presence a weight I can't escape. I sleep with the lights on, the windows covered, every creak of the building sending my heart racing, and I never touch wax anymore, terrified that one day the safe will open itself and the shadows will step out, their champ pulling me into the darkness.